So, I mean, the sad thing about the UN Declaration of Human Rights is the UN agencies themselves did not respect this declaration. The World Bank, the organization that I know best from being there, imprisoned there for 15 years, the last outgoing president, Zelek, never once used the word democracy during his entire term. He never gave it, and I had a blog that was tormenting him about this, so I know this firsthand. And when I questioned his spokesman, he agreed with me. Yes, he's never used the word democracy. He's not allowed to use the word democracy. So obviously, the World Bank was not even endorsing the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And instead, they were doing things like giving lots of aid to autocrats like Meles in Ethiopia, who is using the aid to, and this was documented by Human Rights Watch, and yet the World Bank did nothing about this, that Meles was using the aid to starve his political opponents and to give food relief to anyone who was a political supporter. Now, when the World Bank itself is not recognizing that basic human right, then I argue there is very much a double standard.
Thank you. Dambisa, very briefly.
So, two things. First of all, there's not a single country in the history of the world that has achieved long-term economic growth and reduced poverty in a meaningful way by relying on aid. Not one. So the notion that we should sit here and say, oh, woe is we, poor Africans, we need to give them more aid, is rubbish. Second of all, Zambia, which is my country, 2 months ago, well, first of all, 2 years ago, all I heard from people was Dambisa is completely insane. These countries cannot go to the market. They can't do capital markets. That's left for the other countries. Africa's ring-fenced. Paul Collier calls it shearing off from the rest of the world. 2 months ago, Zambia did a bond, $750 million, unsecuritized. So it wasn't basically based on copper flows or anything. Unsecuritized, $750 million. It came through, so it was more aggressively priced than Italy, Spain, or Portugal. And not only that, it was 15 times oversubscribed. That is the way you create economic development. That is the way you hold governments accountable. So just get the aid system out of your mind. Whatever Clinton and all these other agencies are doing, fantastic, but that is not going to create sustainable 7%, at least 7% growth is what we need on that continent and around the emerging world. These sort of marginal interventions, these relatively small beer interventions are not going to create economic growth. You know what creates economic growth. We know how to create jobs. We know that trade is better than aid. So instead of having large subsidy programs that lock African produce out of the West, start there. Get rid of your common agriculture policy and get rid of those programs, and then we can talk about economic growth in Africa.
Thank you very much. You can see why these are two of the most provocative voices in the business. Thank you.